Hey, Lynda, if you're with us, you're welcome to turn your
Yes,
camera on.
yes, I'm with you, Megan. Yes, I'm with you. Yes,
There we go.
yeah. Start my video. It wouldn't let me do that. So yes, here I am. Thank you very much. Yes, at this stage, we're waiting still for Helen, but this is a subject that's very dear to my heart. And I've run this course with many, many people in facilitating and understanding that it's a unique path for everyone. And that for me is exciting, is that in the second half of life in our generation, that we have this opportunity to design a gift season or an extra time in life. But it does take some inner work. And that's what we're hoping to be chat about today.
Yeah, of course. Okay, let's start us off. I want to hear a little bit more about your career journey, what that was like. And I want to especially focus on when you made the shift into thinking about ageism in the workplace. Was it personally affecting you first, or was this something you saw around you before you were within the age range you are trying to help?
So for me, it was absolutely my own crossroads moment at the age of 50. I found myself retrenched or made redundant in a position I loved, but it was typical of a 21st century world where a company had been bought out, and those of us who were in the company were asked to leave, and they moved the company to a different city. And similarly at that time, both my children got married and both left South Africa. And so I found myself in this deep kind of pity party hole of saying, I'm 50, my children are gone, empty nester. I'd been divorced already for 10 years at that point, but not focused on the divorce or my dreams because I'd been focusing on my children. And then all of a sudden, it felt like the carpet had been pulled right out. And after about 6 months, I thought, pull yourself together. You have 6 good months ahead of you, 25 good years ahead of you. To do what you would like. So what will that look like for you in this season? And I was doing some work with a futurist, and he said to me, the baby boomer generation will not retire like previous generations. And you're 50, why don't you look at what that means for South Africa? So that was 16 years ago. I'm 66 now. And it's been a passionate, lifelong journey, and it continues to evolve.
Now, obviously, this was probably, like you said, it was a crossroads for you. It was probably a very emotionally fraught time or season in your life. Would you say that era of your life, that what you're stepping into now is where you are actually able to make choices for yourself and really think about what you want, as opposed to having to put other people's needs ahead of yours, both as a caregiver as well as, as just a person that lives in the world?
Yeah. And I think, as I said, it's unique and different for everyone. Some people at 35 are in the caregiving phase with parents. If you are in a family unit or in a blended family, your picture may look completely different to mine. And so it is, and a lot of people are having children later. So at 50, they may still be very much in the middle of that journey. And so it's a case more of, we're living in a world where we're living healthier for longer, and a technology connected world that allows us many more opportunities to work for longer, whether we need to or we choose to, as long as we're healthy and do the inner work. I think that's the most important thing.
Yeah, I think that's a good point to highlight, right?
Sorry, Megan,
You're good now. Take your time. I think you made a really good point, highlighting the fact that inner work still needs to be done. And there are, we are at a precipice, right? And I feel like this has happened for every generation, but we get to this point where we're like, oh, we can't expect things to just continue happening along the model that we've seen play out with the generation before us or the one above them. So I do think we are at a really good and interesting perspective, because these things are changing so much. Like you said, people aren't they already don't work at the same company for 45 years and then retire. It's just not a thing. And, like you said, people having kids later, or, maybe they're finding their career later in their life. I mean, I'm on sheesh, I'm 37. I think I'm on career 4 at this point. So, yeah, it is really important to highlight this. As we see the world changing, how do you think that is impacting the world of work? Do you think there are other factors at play here?
Well, I think that the amount of money that we may have saved for a longer life may mean that we look at it and we're saying, I have no choice. That was mine in a divorce scenario, to work for longer. In fact, there was it's two sides. The one is, I know I need to work for longer to save more, but I also need to earn for longer to visit my children because they were on other continents to me. And if I wanted to get to know my grandchildren, I needed to have more money to be able to do that. So for me, it was always important to find, and I think the other thing that's really important if we're going to work for longer is that we find work that we love, that we're passionate about, because when we love it and we choose it, it doesn't feel like work. It feels like play. And it feels like, I think this is the season we get to be in charge. Whereas at other parts of your career, you may be golden handcuffed because of a bond, because of children's education, because you've done a degree in a certain area of life, and now you feel you need to stay in that career. But in this season, you need to really step back and ask yourself a whole lot of questions about, do I want to work flexibly? Do I want to run my own business? What is it that I'm passionate about? Because it's once we start to think through what that might look like, is that we navigate the way to that point where we discover what that might be. And saying that, it's not easy, but it is a wonderful when I see the lights go on for people when they've done this process for themselves.
Yeah, and I think it's also really, it's important for people to realize that it's okay to feel lost. It's completely fine. Like this is the I mean, to a certain extent, that's the world that we all live in, right? Nobody has done today
Correct.
before, ever. And if they tell you they have, they're lying. So I think it is really important that, we think about these things. Do you think there are other things that that older workers should do to remain relevant within their chosen fields?
So they definitely technology. And so, as I've said, firstly, discovering and navigating and asking yourself those questions is the first piece to remain relevant. So I always use the Ikigai model of, what do you love? What are you skilled at? What could you get paid for? And what does the world need? Because when we look at those 4 questions around our own lives and then build some action steps, it opens up what may become relevant for us to dream about. It may mean that we need to learn new skills. Lifelong learning is one of the benefits of the technology world, is we can keep learning. We never stop learning in this world. Whereas in the 20th century, it was very much about education, work, retirement, death. It was much more linear. And so,
I mean, continuing education was only a thing if you were in certain fields, right? Medicine, law, those kinds of things you expected.
Correct. And now, I mean, there are so many opportunities, and the pace of change, as you've said, pace of change is so fast that we, as you said yourself, you're on your 4th career, is that we, as something happens that means that, ChatGPT is kind of coming in now and making a whole bunch of people terrified that they're going to lose what they feel they can offer the world. And so we're constantly having to experiment and change and grow and learn and remain relevant. And as much as that's the other part of that, is that it's good for us from a purposeful, engaged perspective. Financially, it's great, but keeping this brain purposeful and relevant is what keeps us healthier for longer.
Yeah, of course. And it kind of goes back to what you were talking about, right? Is if you are lucky enough and resourced enough to be able to explore and pursue a career that interests you, right? That you find interesting, that you are energized by, then there is a natural curiosity that comes with that, right? Because you want to learn more about it. Our brains are sponges. They want new things. So if we are introducing, new information about something that really practically affects us, as opposed to maybe keeping up with the Kardashians. No hate, y'all. There's a place for, trash TV. But if we are keeping up with these kinds of things, like you said, it really does make it far less arduous and far less of a task, to kind of do the work that we need to do to keep up and maintain relevancy. What are, let's touch on a couple of the skills that you think people should be learning if they are, finding themselves at this point in their careers.
Right. So obviously, if there is a specific desire, like wanting to become a coach or a facilitator or a mentor, or try something completely new, there may be skills that you may need to develop in those areas. But the one that impacts us all is technology. And so again, as an older generation, we are not digital natives, we are digital nomads. And so it's a learned skill for us. And so from a digital literacy point of view, becoming comfortable with digital literacy, building a personal brand, and making sure that your LinkedIn profile reflects exactly what you're looking for and who you are now. And that I find it's such a simple thing to do for me, but it looks, when I look at people's LinkedIn profiles, they're absolutely dead. They haven't changed the picture. You don't get an essence of who they are. And yet it's such an important space of building your personal brand. And it's a shift from being part of or under an umbrella of a brand to now being the brand. And a lot of people say to me, but I don't like to push myself. But it's not about that. It's about if you want to work for longer, in some ways you have to market yourself and become known. And it depends completely on what it is that you're aiming to do, is you have to engage. One of my great technology teachers says in social media, you have to work out aloud. And that means that you have to engage. So it's no good being on LinkedIn and you don't engage, because then who even knows you're there?
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
So how will you ever, if anybody find you because you're quiet? So add value, ask questions, add content. So those are skills that are absolutely critical to do. So become and learn how to engage in the right social media that would be great for who you want to be going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And if anything y'all are hearing here sparks some more interest, if you have follow-up questions, please feel free to send those in the chat. We'll try to get to as many as we can. I'll also share some links in the chat to some of our archives on past chats we've had with Helen, as well as some past chats on ageism in the workplace, to give y'all some more information, especially along this line, because I know LinkedIn profiles are their own beast entirely. We could spend hours talking just about LinkedIn profiles. All right, we did have a good question from Sarah in the chat. Sarah says, I've stayed at my current job as it provided stability and security, but I have no passion for it. Now at 54, I'm feeling a drive to change, but it's scary. What are the processes to start at my age? Okay, so somebody in Sarah's place who thinks that, they don't really like the job they're doing, but they think it's time for change. They're a little scared. What is the first thing you tell them?
Well, I think the first thing you need to do is, I don't know what the retirement age is for Sarah's job from her company, but it may, if it's 60, for instance, she would possibly remain, but start on the side to design and think through what the next season will be for her. Because one of the things I have discovered is that when we do our course called The Next Chapter or Your Legacy Season, that Helen and I run together, is that you need to start thinking about these things 3-4 years before, because it takes time and energy to create what it is that you want. So that would be my advice to her.
I like that. Hi, Helen. Welcome to the stage. We're so happy to see you.
Oh,
Um,
I'm late,
oh,
but
you're good. We're just happy to see you today.
yeah.
Now, so we're going through and talking about being kind of at that cusp of whether or not you should leave, or what you should do for your next steps. Helen, what do you recommend? Do you follow the same lines as Lynda? Do that inward work and try and figure out what you want, or are there additional steps that you would recommend for somebody who's literally just starting out on this journey?
Right. I absolutely agree with Lynda. As she mentioned, we do her course, and it's very thorough. And I had read somewhere, unless you know where you are, you can't figure out where you're going to go. And so that's really the beginning of what we try to deal with when we deal with coach people or do the course, is that self-examination, that understanding what your skills are, all the hats you've worn, all the different roles that you've taken over the years, whether they're personal or professional, everything you've learned in doing those roles. And then from that, you start to examine what it is that you enjoy doing, what it is that you love to do, what it is that you, as Lynda has put in the course, can get paid to do, what it is the world needs. All of these things are important for you to think about. And it's very important because, as I'm sure you've discussed, the need to either want or need to work longer, you need to identify what it is that will make you happy with that in that last segment of your chapters. So it's very important for the self-examination. And again, when you're doing it, it's not just examining what you're capable of doing, but what you've enjoyed doing, what you think you could offer to the world, and what you think people would welcome and need and embrace. So those steps are very critical. Yes, that self-examination is the first step, and it's a very important step.
Yes, absolutely. In case y'all are curious about some of the concepts we're talking about, the last one is Ikigai. It's that you see it before, it's like a 4-part Venn diagram. But yeah, it's a really interesting concept, huge. So obviously, more than we can cover right now, but definitely check that out. I put some links in the chat. Okay, now, Lynda, one of the things you had talked about was people should kind of take a step back and think about if they want to continue employment elsewhere, or if they want to start building their own business. What do you think are some of the benefits of this, and what should people be considering when they are trying to figure out which direction they want to go?
So I suppose it depends completely on the person's situation and needs. Often you can find flexibility that you may want in a new season within where you are, if you speak up and ask the right questions. But I think for each person, that needs to be, we all work in different cultures and different environments, and we kind of need to understand what that looks like. For me, I'm a serial entrepreneur, so I can't help myself but find opportunities to want to start more businesses. But I do know that some of us are more naturally entrepreneurial than others, but I do think leaning more towards entrepreneurial thinking is the way to go in this season, because it allows us to build the framework that we want, whether it's the flexibility. For me right now, as I'm sitting here doing this with you, I'm sitting in the UK in my son's house, and I've been to a wedding in Greece. And so for me, those were important things to be able to continue to do while I earn and can live the life that I want in this season. So for me, I call it a portfolio life right now, is because it's a mixture of work and whatever the other things are, whether you want to call it semi-retirement or health and friends and family and travel. It's for me the best way to do it. So I think that it's up to each person to understand and to learn the skills and to experiment. I think experimentation is something that we all, and remaining curious to the things that are possible and then opening ourselves up. And if we fail, that's great, because we know that's not what we want. And it just takes us one step closer to where we want to be. And so experimenting is great. Be curious, ask questions, think and ask people what they think you're good at. And
yes.
you know,
this
may
can be hugely, like the things that you think you're good at may be a very small list compared to the things that other people think you're good at. And like, it's perfectly fine to, like, you know, ask your bestie, ask your mom, ask people that think you're pretty great. But I think I love this suggestion, right? Because getting that outside perspective, like, there's a bunch of things that I can do that I assume everyone can do, because if I can learn to do it, it can't be that hard, really. Right. And so, like, Helen's laughing. She's heard me say this so many times, but really, like, I think it's a very good, good point to ask other people what you appear to be good at. We're our own harshest critics generally. So I think that's a really good advice.
The season should lean towards our natural talents and gifts.
Yeah. I like that. Helen, for your money, obviously you started a company, Tanagui Career Consultants. Do you think that the starting your own business line is for everyone? Or do you think there's anything else people should consider or think about when they are approaching this maybe like fork in the road?
Well, I think it's something that they definitely need to examine. It's something they need to consider. It's something that can be very rewarding. And so it's definitely worth exploring. As Lynda said, if it doesn't work, then you move on and you do what does work. But I think one of the things that I wanted to point out is, and I'm sure everything that Lynda's covered, and there's a lot, you really need to start this process earlier than some of us think, to really be able to lay the groundwork for success and for identifying. That gives you so much opportunity to explore, to examine, to really be flexible and open to something that you may not even think of today, but tomorrow it will be there. So I really think that it is certainly entrepreneurship, especially today, is a very wonderful option to be able to explore and experiment with, and doing it on the side or initially, or just spending the time to create the plan, the model. And as both of you were talking, asking friends what you're good at, or family what you're good at, and getting all of that input. So it's just I can't stress that enough, that people should be starting this earlier than they think today, because of the fact that we're all going to be not only living longer, but a better quality of life. And people will be working in their 70s and 80s, and it will not be, there will be a day when it will not be unusual.
Oh, please. I'm already well prepared for that. Like, I'm never going to be able to retire. Social Security is not going to exist. Like, if I go in with this mindset, then anything else is gravy, right? But yeah, you're right. We do need to think in terms of what the impacts, long-reaching, are of the changes that we're seeing now. All right, ladies, we only have 3 minutes left. I want to make sure we wrap on time. If people want to follow up with you, if they want to see what you've got going on or learn more, where should they go? What should they know?
Helen, give them the details of our landing page.
Okay. Well, they can go to tanagui.com and they'll see Building Your Legacy as one of the options. And in there is detailed information on the course that Lynda and I offer, and that as far as date, what's covered, and it's very extensive. Any questions they have, they can email me right through the site. Everything is right there on the site, and they will get all the information they need for understanding what the course offers and what they will be getting from it. Because it is very, and as I mentioned earlier, Lynda created it, and it is so in-depth and covers so much information. I'm just always excited about being involved in it.
Excellent. All right. So in our last minute here, I just want to ask a real quick question of y'all. Obviously, some of the things we've talked about have been starting this journey earlier than you think you need to. Thinking in terms of the inner work. So really, like, looking at yourself, what do you enjoy doing? Consult the Ikigai paradigm framework. And then, if anybody, if people are only going to take a 1/3 thing from this chat, What do you want it to be? Start earlier, think about, do that inner work. What should that third thing be that they take with them today? Lynda, you want to go first?
I need to build a personal brand.
I like that. I like that. And if y'all have never heard the personal brand stuff, I'll share another link to the chats that we've done that on. Effectively, your personal brand is what you want people to say about you when you're not in the room. Helen, what do you think? Same answer, or do you have a different one?
Well, I think the personal brand is so critical, but I think they just need to be open to exploration.
Absolutely love this. Lynda and Helen, thank you both so much. It's been really, really wonderful to get to chat a little bit more with Helen, and Lynda to meet you and learn more about what y'all are doing together. Very, very excited to see how this goes for you. So thank you so much.